Everyone to the Into the Badlands panel discussion. That was an incredible episode again. Thank you. So I just wanted to remind you all before we get down to business that this is a two-night event. So the show returns tomorrow on AMC at 9 p.m. Central, and then bonus in its regular time slot on Monday, there's another new episode, and that will take us through to the show's end. So I'm very sad and excited at the same time because I can't wait to see what comes next. So at this time, I would like to introduce the show's creative team, executive producer and writer Al Gough, executive producer and writer Miles Miller, executive producer and actor Daniel Wu. Come on up. Is it okay if I sit with you guys? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Please do, please do.
I would like to lecture you from an actual lectern, but I'm not going to do that. So I actually want to get back to kind of the origins of the show, and when you first set out to make this, you know, if you could talk a little bit about what your goals were, and then if you feel like now that you're kind of in the home stretch, do you feel like you did what you set out to do?
Well, Miles and I have always loved martial arts projects. We worked with Jackie Chan and Jet Li, so I know looking at us, you're like, yeah, martial arts, totally. And we wanted to do something, we wanted to bring that to television. And so we had this idea to do this show, and we didn't want to set it in the past. We wanted it to be in the future, and it was kind of a mashup of everything we loved, which is steampunk, samurai movies, and Chinese historical epics, and frankly, some of the Hong Kong movies from the 90s. And we know a producer, Stacy Scher, who had a deal at AMC with her partner, Michael Schamberg, and she knew Daniel Wu and Stephen Fung, his partner, because they had met when she was doing Contagion in Hong Kong. So it was literally a marriage of three partnerships that all worked really well together. So we all met, and we all got along. and I think what was great is because we all had a job. You know what I mean? Miles and I were going to show run and write it, and Daniel, though we didn't know it at the time, was going to star in it. He was sort of the last person to realize this. We knew it immediately. Stephen Fung was our fight director, and Stacy is an amazing producer. So that's how it sort of all came together back in, and this was in 2013.
And so when they approached you to both star, produced, I don't know how you do it all, frankly. Were you daunted by that prospect?
Well, no, it was a slow evolution because initially Stacy called me to help her with the martial arts aspects of the show. And so at the time, I did not think that I would be playing Sonny because in my head as a producer, and I was being totally like not selfish about it, was like, we need to find a guy like in his late 20s, early 30s, and I was 40 at the time. Because if the show is successful and it goes on for 8 years, like this guy's going to need to be able to fight for two big fights an episode, every episode for years. And I was 40 at the time. I'd already come through lots of injuries, and I kind of retired from doing kung fu action. I'd done a couple of projects, but I torn ACL.
Did you actually sit there and go, I'm out of the game?
No, I really, literally, like I didn't even consider myself, and I broke my ankle. I was recovering from that, and like all these injuries. And you know, I was managed by Jackie Chan for 11 years. I saw the pain that, you know, that he's going through in his older age, and I was like, I don't want that to happen to me. So I had the luxury of my career in Hong Kong and doing over 65 films to not just do the martial arts genre. And so I mentally kind of pulled away from it. And so when this project came about, you know, I was very eager to do the action side and bring that Hong Kong style level action to American screens, and I was really into that. But I didn't want to volunteer my body for this show. But as we started to develop it more and more, as I read the script more and more, I started to fall in love with the character more and more. And we actually did auditioned lots and lots of people, like hundreds of people for the role. And they were either like great martial artists, terrible actors, or good actors and not good martial artists. And the amount of people that could actually pull this role off, they were Asian, have a name, have experience as an actor, but also be a good fighter. It was a very, very small group of people. And in fact, like one of my best friends.
And by small, he means Daniel Wu.
And so at the end of the day, they were looking at me, and like when we got down to that small group, they're like, Daniel, this is for you. And I thought about it, and we had David Dobkin on for our first few episodes, and he called me, and he really convinced me to do it. He's like, I can't think of anybody else to do it besides you. And I had just seen his movie, The Judge. I had just lost my mother, and so there was like this real connection, emotional connection to him. I was like, okay, I don't know if I can do it, but I believe in you, and if you believe in me, let's give it a shot. So I went and trained for a couple months, realized my body was still there and I could do it, and so that's when I committed, and that's how I'm here for 3 seasons.
Well, I can absolutely say I cannot imagine anyone else playing Sonny. I really can't.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and another thing was, like, having done movies my whole career, I didn't want to get stuck into TV, because I didn't want to be stuck with a boring character arc, like where you watch, like, these crime investigation shows, and the same character every episode. Like, people die every episode, it doesn't change them. I'm like, wait, that's not the kind of character I want to play over a long period of time. But the way they wrote Sonny, there were so many arcs. I mean, every season, the arcs are so different for Sonny. I really took that as a challenge at the end, and I really, like, fell in love with it. And I think, to this date, of all the characters I played, I think Sonny is my favorite character of all.
Just going off what you said about the martial arts, what we've seen over the years, I would love to hear from you all. I know that there's a separate unit that films the action. You have Master Didi, you have Stephen Fung, but just take me through conceptualizing it for an episode. How do you treat the fights? How does it go from the page, or just your brain, to the page, to the set, and actually doing it? If you guys could walk me through that.
Well, we, again, our first martial arts films were Lethal Weapon 4 and Shanghai Noon, so we actually got to work with some of the greats. And we treat the action sequences like musical numbers. They have to be both showstoppers and plot movers. There has to be a concept. There has to be a story. And so that's how we look at it. So when we sit in the writer's room and we're breaking an episode and we get to a fight, the first question we ask is, why are we fighting? And if there isn't a good character, emotional, or story reason to do it.
Because it's awesome.
Yeah. And
Can that ever be the answer?
That's also true. We say what's going to be awesome.
Yes.
What's a great location? So we sit there and think about, just riff 50 ideas for what location would be really cool for a fight. That's a big factor. But then, as Al said, it also has to move the story and character forward.
Yeah, because, I've said this before, but if you don't do that, it becomes like porn. I mean, it's like you just fast forward through the story to get to the fight, and you watch it, and then you're done, right? But like what I think Al and Miles have done really well, and it's really fucking important for the show, is that it's integrated into the story, and there's a reason for it, and that's why you guys.
It's still porn, Daniel.
Right. Well, it kind of is, but it's at least connected to the main story, and it's not like bad porn where you don't watch the plot line at all.
Right.
And you just watch the action, right? We didn't want that to happen with the show. We wanted you to be like compelled by the story, which then drove you into this amazing fucking action, right? And that's it. And so we're trying to avoid being pornographers.
That is exactly where I expected this panel to go. Well done, me. But each character has their own style, which is one of the things I really love. And do you spend a lot of time really coming up with a specific thing that you want to do for a character in that moment?
Yeah, as executive producer, I was really more in charge of the fight unit. So we had a lot of discussions with Master Didi, Steven, Andy Chang, like all the people involved to create the fights. So, we have a 5-week training period before we start filming, right? We call it fight camp. So all the actors come in, we can see what they do, we can see what they're good at, and we don't try to make them do stuff they can't do. Like most people in this show are not martial artists, and so they had to learn really quickly how to do it. And so Master Didi, our choreographer, is incredible in that he can look at someone and goes, what is their strengths and weaknesses, and how do we use that to our advantage? So obviously, every character is physically different, and so they will take on a different kind of physical fighting form. And Master Didi, with years and years of experience, is able to analyze that the Matrix. He worked on the Matrix, and figure out what's the best thing for each fighter, and then that's how their style is created. So if you see Babu in this past fight scene, it's like he's like a buffalo. He's like powerful and grounded. He's not flying around as much, and that's because of his physical presence. He's a big guy. He's not super tall, but he has a really physical presence, weight to him, and so we use that to our advantage. Whereas like Emily, who plays the widow, she's a very slight, light girl, so she needs to be quick and balletic in her moves, and so that's how that all evolved.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, can you talk a little bit about, I don't want spoilers from this season, but are there fight scenes or moments, confrontations that you can tease a little bit?
Oh yeah, there's one that we'll give you guys a sneak preview of
Yay.
shortly, which is great. We get to see pairings that we haven't seen before. Like we get to see, Baji and the Widow fight. We get to see, the Master square off with Babu, with Pilgrim. So I think for us, it was also what are the combinations that we haven't seen, and how do we do those as well?
So for Daniel, how, again, we're not going to give out spoilers. That's not what we're going to do here, because he could fight us and punch really hard, I suppose. Were you happy with how Sunny's journey turned out?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, there's so many incredible arcs per season for Sunny, and this season, it's for season 1 and 2, it's mostly been a personal journey for him, right? It's about finding his love, finding his baby, dealing with loss, and then the sickness that his baby has that any father or parent can feel. But then now with this Dark Chi and Babu getting it, or Pilgrim getting it, it's become a whole different situation for Sunny. And so this arc, the second half of the season, is about him literally trying to save the world. And he hasn't done that, before. And so he's finding himself in this new role, this grave responsibility to basically unhack this nuclear bomb that's about to go off, and he has taken full responsibility for it. I mean, I think in this episode he realizes he really screwed up, But what are you going to do? As you're a father with a baby, you're going to do whatever you're going to need to do to save that kid. I would kill anybody for my daughter, that's the only person I would kill for. Not even my wife, but my daughter, I would. and at the expense of other people. But Sunny has finally realized that now, and so he's trying to make amends for it this season. So this second half of the season, that arc that Sunny's going through is really interesting because it changed so much, from a personal journey to a really a global scale problem that he's trying to solve.
Well, one of the things I've loved about Into the Badlands from the beginning is just visually and then thematically and then and tonally. I mean, we're kind of awash in post-apocalyptic scenarios, but this one is more optimistic than most. Even when the characters are in tough situations, obviously, they're not having a wonderful time at an all-inclusive post-apocalyptic resort. But, to me, it feels like the characters were always going towards something. There was always some goal or some connections that they could make. Was that very much in all of your minds when you began to make it? Optimistic's not the right word, but not hopeless. Yeah.
Yeah, that was absolutely the goal. The goal is visually as well to make the show distinct. It feels like there's the Blade Runner version of the future and there's the Mad Max version of the future, and we wanted to do neither of that. So I think part of the aesthetic is that hopefulness and the color and the saturation of the look, which obviously reflects Hong Kong cinema and Chinese cinema and Japanese cinema, but it was also the idea that this is an American show, and how do you visualize the future that's not so bleak? Because even in the most impoverished places now, it's highly colorful. You go to India or places of poverty, actually, they're amazingly colorful, and people live their lives. They're actually hopeful about their lives.
Yeah, and that gives them hope. And
yeah,
like all good sci-fi or post-apocalyptic themes, it's really a reflection of current society. And we don't get a chance to talk about this much about Badlands because there's so many other cool layers about the show. But that's one thing I feel really strongly about the show, is that we really did that. And we've, the wall appears in season 2, right? We've made some social commentary here. But what I really liked about what Al and Miles did is that there's always this idea of hope. So no matter how fucked up our situation is right now in America, we got to have hope, man. We got to have hope. And I think this show does that. Like, this, right now, what's going on with this crazy political extremism, sorry to rant on this right now, but I just really want to say this. This political extremism that we have going on is not unlike what the barons are like in their tribalism and all this stuff. And what we need to do is like, fuck all that stuff, man. We need to have empathy, love, and respect for one another, and we'll be good. So that's our hope. Well, that's what we're trying to do with this show. And I hope that's the same thing for this country. Having been away, like my whole career was in Hong Kong for 20 years, and being away and looking back at America, and then now coming back here and living here and doing the show, I think it's really important for us to really have positive messages for the audience. And I think the hope is a really important one. So don't give up hope, guys. It's fucked up now, but we're going to get through this. We just need to have empathy, love, and respect for one another, and we're good.
No, I mean, I actually think this is one of the reasons I love, I guess what some people would call genre entertainment, is because you set out to entertain and you have done that really well, but it's all, one other aspect of the show is that there's an Asian man who's been a romantic lead, who's been an action lead, who's been a leader of people, you've had so many different ways that your character has been portrayed in so many layers. They're incredibly powerful women in the narrative. I mean, do you think that that's just as important as any other message you could be sending?
Sure, and it's really like these guys are responsible for that conscious decision to put that stuff in this show.
And actually, it was not, I wouldn't say a fight, but it actually takes incredible effort to do that. To get you're in Ireland, which is probably the whitest place on earth, trying to get extras who are diverse and get them in every frame. And it really was an education for the film crew. It was like they hadn't really experienced that before. So it was really a very conscious effort, and really in the writer's room as well.
Yeah.
I have to say that, like, you guys don't know this, but when we're in Ireland on set, it's a beautiful thing, man. There's like Irish crew, British crew, American actors, British actors, Chinese people, everybody all working together to kick ass and make a great show. And I've never seen that. Like 20 years of this business, it's always like, oh, Hong Kong film, Hong Kong people, American film, American people. There's a little bit of diversity, but our show is so diverse, not just in the casting, but in the back behind the scenes stuff. And that's the one thing I'm going to miss the most about the show, and not doing it anymore, is being around those people. It was a beautiful thing. It was a really, really beautiful thing.
It's true, because even our executive producer in Ireland, who was responsible for production, is an amazingly powerful female character herself. So in our post-production, female as well. So it's in every regard we were about empowering people.
But does that still take a lot of persuasion? You said it was kind of an uphill battle. I mean, I've written a lot about this, and I just think
it's not persuasion. It's about just breaking the norm.
And making a conscious decision to be mindful of it and do
be
it.
Proactive.
Yeah, not just like go with the flow.
You had said, I think this one's not working. You had said in one of your very nice pieces about the show that the diversity feels effortless, and we laughed. We're like, actually, it takes a lot of effort. But we're glad it feels effortless. But it's something that we've definitely tried to push, because it's a world in the future, and this is what we think the world should look like. And also, television's always been at the tip of the spear, I think, in sort of social change. Like you first saw, I mean, I think most people were exposed to gay people and gay relationships through Will and Grace. I think the first time a lot of people saw an African-American president was 24. So I think once those things are in television, I mean, I remember as a kid, the first interracial couple I ever saw was on, what was this? No, it was one of the Norman Lear shows, and I'm blanking on the name. The Jeffersons. Right. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's what television can, without being preachy, but you just you put it in there and you show it, and then people get comfortable with those sort of, at the time, feel like outlier ideas, and then they slowly sort of get into the fabric of society.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about this show is it wasn't an agenda, a personal agenda.
Not at all.
Which is just natural decision making, right, and being just mindful of it, and that was the beauty of it all.
And also, martial arts is the great equalizer. You don't have to be big, you don't have to be powerful. I mean,
doesn't matter what color you are.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what color you are. And you know, you literally can have all shapes and sizes, male, female. It doesn't matter. In fact, Master Didi said he prefers women doing, because he thinks they just look more beautiful when they do it. But it is a great equalizer so that you can have, you know when the widow goes up against somebody, you're feeling bad for the other person. So that's what's great.
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, Baroness Chow, is she back this year?
Oh, yeah.
I love her because the fashion on the show, I mean, what you guys wear, how everything looks, it's incredible, right?
I mean, that's part of like making a show that's built for you guys, like Comic-Con people and cosplayers, because we want to make it look beautiful, and we want stuff to inspire people to go and copy the show, copy and do that stuff and be inspired by it. But Giovanni, our costume designer, amazing. Just amazing. He looks at everything like, he's like a Renaissance man. He's looking at everything just to make it as beautiful as possible. It sucks sometimes. They're not comfortable, but hard to fight in, but they look damn good, so yeah.
Well, actually speaking to that, Daniel, looking back, you've been an executive producer, you've been on set, you have been doing all these incredible roles behind the scenes and on camera. How tired are you in a given day? I mean, is it a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting, and it's really exhausting, but at the same time, like, I have so much drive because I love doing it. Like, the show, I've never really worked on something where I've been so passionate about every little minute detail about it. And so, like, I had a trailer. I get in there and put my costume on, and then I'm off on set, and I don't ever come back until the end of the day when I change out. I never take naps, or sometimes I do, but I'm usually around, especially on our main set where the weapons designers, the production design, and costume design, everybody's all there. I can just walk like 2 minutes and check in on stuff for the next, fight we're gonna do. Like, do the weapons look cool? Are they gonna last? And blah, blah, blah. And so, like, I just got into weapon design. I got into all these other things that just because, like, we needed somebody to do all that stuff. And so constantly, like, in between setups, I'm out in the production offices dealing with something, like doing something. And again, it is exhausting, but I go off at work at 6 o'clock every day, or 7 o'clock, because Ireland, the sun goes down super early. And I get home in time to have dinner with my family, and like, wow, I had a really full day today, and sleep really well, and then get up and do it all again. But like, again, it's not tiring because the passion and drive is there, and I just loved it. It was that you feed off that energy.
Yeah, the reward of it all, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Alan Miles, have you gotten to go to Ireland and I assume drink heavily with the crew? Have you gotten to go experience it on set?
Well, Ireland was amazing. We did the first season in New Orleans, which was also great, but the move to Ireland really, really changed the show. It allowed us to be much bigger in scope. We had a lot more money in terms of the bucks were stretched in Ireland, and we had an amazing crew. So it really was.
And it's a beautiful country. Like, within 20 minutes of anywhere, there's like so much choice, like forests, mountains, oceans, whatever you want.
It really
couldn't be more ideal.
Yeah, I mean, we always joke that the season 1 of The Badlands is like world glimpsing. Like, we suggested a lot of things and showed what we could, but really the big world building came in seasons 2 and 3. And Miles, in particular, spent a lot of time over there. Because season 3, there was 16 episodes, so I was in the writer's room. Miles was on set, and he directed 2 episodes this season as well.
Very cool. Can you tease us a little bit about that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was a great experience. And there's sort of, I guess, halfway through this last block, we have some pretty epic battles, I'll say that. And we get to see some great stuff of Daniel's past. Sort of the character of Sonny, you really get to see his backstory and meet some new characters. So it was really fun.
Because I think there was a talk of a sister at some point. I honestly, I literally know nothing more than you know.
She's coming. Yeah. Sister's coming.
Nice. That is very cool. Well, I really have to say that Baroness Chow and the Widow are my favorites, no offense.
I get it. That's what I love about the show. Is like everybody can love somebody different, and it's like so great. It's so great.
And I can't understand why Mo likes the redheaded Baron.
No idea.
Yes, who wears
I
black.
was going to try to cosplay the Widow, but then I was like, no, I'll be really lazy and I won't. I'll just be Irish and redheaded and very, very pale. So that's my cosplay. I might be jumping the gun by like a minute, but I'm just so excited to show this. We have a clip for you, so just don't forget, tomorrow night the show returns, Monday night it's a regular time slot. That's where we're going to see the final run of episodes. So this Monday's episode, can we have a little clip from that? And that's what I'm like when I haven't had enough coffee. That's incredible. So what we want to do now is give the audience an opportunity to ask a few questions. I wish we had like 4 hours for millions of questions. We're probably just going to have a few. People can line up, I think, over there. But before that, before the first questions, I wondered if there was anything that you just wanted to say to the fans.
Oh, I mean, you guys are the reason why we work so hard to make the show. When we started first season and we slowly started to build the fan base and see all your comments and all that stuff online and just like how passionate you were about the show, season 2 and 3, no matter how hard it was to make, just made it all worth it. So I want to thank you guys so much for sticking with us and being our warriors out there and telling your friends about the show and selling it to everybody. That's going to be the sad part about leaving the show and the end of the season is not having that connection with you guys anymore. But it'll be there. It'll be there. But I want to thank you guys for all that. So thanks for coming today, and thanks for all of your support.
No, just to echo Daniel, I mean, you know, when you're sitting, you know, and Miles's home office, and you're sort of cooking up this thing at the beginning, and then you go and you start to pitch it to people, and that's the thing with the show is you're sort of getting everybody on board the train. First it's your creative partners, then it's the network, then you know, have to go out and, you know, critics, and then the fans. And when you have people, you know, that really jump on board and love this thing, and, you know, really are so passionate about it, I mean, that is why you do it. You want this to be somebody's favorite show, and we so appreciate you guys watching the show, as Daniel said, telling your friends. And look, the good news in this new world we live in, the show will live on forever on Netflix, so that'll also be great.
I can't, over there, I can't see you, sir,
Hi.
but what's your question?
I just wanted to say thank you to all you guys for bringing a serious, I guess, badass Asian character on TV, on the channel that brought us Breaking Bad. And it's just something I really appreciate, just seeing somebody like me do your thing on TV. And that's my only question is, what do you think about the Hong Kong John Woo style, like hard-boiled, The Killer type action movies?
Oh, I love that stuff. But first of all, I want to say thank you. It's interesting because when I started the show, I didn't think about that because, honestly speaking, I spent 20 years of my career in China and Hong Kong making movies where everybody was the same. So I never thought about my race as being something different. And then, you know, but being born here and growing up here and seeing like very lack of representation my whole life growing up here, I now finally realize the importance of me playing Sonny. And I'm glad that I was reluctant to accept that role or being that role model in the beginning, but now I'm very proud to be one of the only Asian American leads on an American show. So thank you for your support and recognizing that. But in terms of the Hong Kong style, that kind of action, I love that stuff, and that actually comes from Chinese kung fu movies, right? That John Woo gun ballet style of making action actually comes from kung fu wuxia genre. And so there's a heavy influence, there's a heavy relationship. And I think that style, that John Woo style, has definitely affected world cinema and how we film action all over the world. And so I think it's very important. In fact, now spoiler, I have this documentary that I'm going to be producing about Hong Kong New Wave and how it influenced action cinema around the world. I'm going to be starting that soon, so there's a little nugget for y'all.
Do we have another question over there? Hi. Go for it.
Baji.
Here. No, it's a butterfly clipper.
Yes. Okay, but there's, you know, when Baji was dressed as a butterfly clipper.
All right.
recognize the vest.
All right. Last season, well, building up has been Sunny, all right, Journey to the West has always been this big influence. And so far we have Sunny, who's like monkey, Baji, who's pig, Pilgrim has been introduced, and last season you turned one character symbol from an armadillo into a horse. Who's going to be our fifth person?
You got that one now.
That's interesting. Well, there is there is a lotus coming, so and that's something that we're going to introduce this season. I would say Journey to the West was really a jumping-off point. I mean, as Daniel and Stephen like to joke, when Chinese audiences watch the show, they're like, "How the hell is this Journey from the West?" So it's really taking some of those key elements, and the fact that it's Sonny's journey and all of the characters' journeys were a journey to enlightenment.
Yeah, I don't think we were ever trying to be literal translation of Journey to the West, but I think the spiritual ethos of Journey to the West is about the spiritual journey that those characters go on. And so we wanted to put our characters through similar situations. And so there are direct correlations like Piggy and MK and Sonny, but then there are parts where we depart from that but keep the ethos of the Journey to the West story.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry, a little too loud. Hi, my name is Zach Pearson. I just first off like to say, seriously, thank you. As you mentioned earlier, for 20 years you saw from the outside, but let me tell you from here, there was basically an action show drought when it came to serious martial arts. You either grew up on Power Rangers, vaguely remember WMAC Masters and Black Slash, which no one ever cared about, until Netflix showed up and then they went and canceled it. So I just like to say, even if you guys don't do anything else, please, please continue to do more stuff like this. My last training base I was at before I got out of the Army, I just mentioned this show in like one Facebook link to my friend who stayed there for a holiday break, because that's actually an option. You don't have to go home, you can stay on your base. He told me that within like maybe 3 or 4 days, he got more than half of the barracks watching it, which means that was more than about 100 to 115 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so my actual question though is, do you guys have a marker? Can I please get your autographs, and can you please put the show out on 4K? Physical copies on 4K.
That isn't really up to us. So, I mean, we sort of have delivered the show. So
Worth a shot.
Yeah, so fair enough.
That'd be great if it could come in 4K, because like on that big screen there, it still looks great.
Yeah.
Right? And so
So is there like a marker up there? Because I would still love them autographs.
there actually is not.
Here we go, here it is.
Oh, here you go. Here you go.
All right.
Here's a marker, so we'll get you. We got you.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Dean Morazzo, and I just wanted to say it's a fantastic show. I grew up my whole life doing martial arts and watching all the martial arts movies, and competed my whole life. And in the beginning of the show was a very dramatic show, great characters, great fight scenes. And then my question is, at what point did you guys decide, you know what, we're going to kick it up a notch and we're going to bring a little comic relief into the film? Because the show has completely changed from the beginning, because it was all dramatic. There was no comedy, there was no laughing. And then all of a sudden I read, wait a minute, the guy from Shaun of the Dead's going to be in this show now? This show's going to be wild. And now that you did Shanghai Noon, and so you dipped back into that pool. So that's really my question. When did you decide, let's kick it up a notch?
That's a really good question, because the first season was very dramatic, and I think for us it's like we were on AMC, so we wanted to be very dramatic. And funnily enough, Miles and myself and David Dobkin, who directed Shanghai Nights, we were like, how did the three guys who made Shanghai Nights make such a serious show? And I think one of the issues when you're in genre and you have something that's serious is that you can tip over into self-seriousness as well. And actually a couple of the reviews from season 1 said, geez, I wish there was a little more humor in this, and frankly we felt the same way. So we wanted to introduce, and we also wanted to have a little bit of a buddy relationship for Sonny, somebody that Sonny could play off of, somebody that Sonny could open up to and talk to.
I requested that.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
I'm lonely. I need somebody to act with.
Otherwise, he's sort of stoic warrior in a post-apocalyptic world. So that's where we introduced Baji. And funnily enough, we were sitting in the writer's room and we kept saying, could we get a Nick Frost type? And one of our producers is like, well, we're managed by the same manager. Maybe we can get Nick Frost. And so we approached the manager. Nick was interested. He'd seen the show. He'd really liked the show.
Nick hadn't seen the show, but I met with him. I met with him in London.
I still don't think he's seen the show, actually, honestly. But he loves making it.
He loves the show now, but yeah, so I met with him in a little coffee shop in London, like a Starbucks, at 7 a.m. in the morning, and pitched him the show, and he loved it. And then he said, yeah, I'll do it. Because I think it was close enough, she didn't in Dublin to Ireland, he could commute, which he also liked. But,
the role he was on.
but then he really fell in love with the show. And his relationship with Daniel, you can see it on the screen. There's a real chemistry there.
Yeah, and in my 20 years of filmmaking, I think this is one of the most special relationships I had with an actor, personally off screen and as well on screen. And you can see it. It's there. The chemistry is there, and I really love that. I'm going to miss that a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love seeing Baji fight. I don't know about you guys, but I
Amazing.
love it.
He is so physically talented. People don't realize that, and there's lots of writings I've seen where it's like, oh, you don't expect that from a fat man. It's like, wait, come on, he's athletic, and like the first day he didn't do fight camp. I have to admit that, but he came in one day. And he was kicking. He'd done some Thai boxing before, and he was kicking the heavy bag. And I was like, holy crap! I would not want to get kicked by one of those kicks.
Right.
So we knew we had power in this guy, and that he could actually do the fight scenes, and he loved it. He's so good with the nunchucks. I can't even do the nunchucks as well as him. So
no, he's good. And one of the things we talked about in the room was, certainly in season 1, it's like everybody who fought you believe could fight. So we're who is the unexpected person? Who's our Sammo Hung? Who's the Sammo Hung who can come in and do this? So, and that's sort of, how it all started. And Nick just crushed it. I mean, he's just so good. All of his instincts are great. He grounds it. He's more than he's obviously very funny, but he's also a really good dramatic actor.
And he also made it how we were talking about how difficult it was for me working on. It just made days so much easier if I could just have 5 minutes of banter with him on set. I was like, oh, I'm charged up. Let's go.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions, so we'll just probably get to 2, and then we'll see.
Hi, I'm Janet, and I too was greatly pleased that you would be here today, and I also would be greatly honored if I could also get an autograph. And I just want to say one of the other aspects besides the fighting in the movie, in the show, is the healing aspect too, that there also always has to be a balance. And I wondered if you could relate any of the actual injuries that you had, if you happened to miss a choreograph.
Yeah, the healing aspect was something that we wanted to include right away when we pitched the show. We talked about how chi is a real thing, and you can use it for bad and you can use it for good, and so that became a theme within the show. Lots of injuries making the show, lots and lots. We were lucky to have this guy Joe, who's a physiotherapist on set. Last season we had a guy who was a stuntman but also a body worker, Matt Lucas, who saved us many, many, many times. It's a crazy show to make. At any one point we have 20, 30 professional athletes on set, busting ass every day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, doing this stuff. And it's crazier than even preparing for a real fight. Because a real fight, you go up there and it's maybe half an hour, and then you're done. You train 6 weeks and you're done. We're doing this 10 hours a day, every single day for 9 months last season, right? And so injuries are bound to happen. And also it's freezing cold.
Right.
So your body is more susceptible to those kind of pulls and sprains and all that kind of stuff. And so it was important to have people on set and around to help fix us when things went bad.
Right.
But luckily, nothing really, really bad.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, I think this is going to be our last question, so no pressure.
My question is actually for Daniel. How long did it take to shoot the fight scene between Sonny and Pilgrim?
This one here?
Yes.
4 or 5 days? Something like that?
5 days, yeah.
Yeah, the bigger fights would be 4 or 5, 6 days. We usually, each episode is about 9 days. We have 9 days to shoot each episode. So we split the flight up within the 9 days. Bigger fights, 6, 7 days. Smaller fights, 1, 2 days. And that was probably an average middle one, 4 or 5 days.
Because they also go a little faster when it's one-on-one versus one-on-many.
Yes, exactly.
So that's the other thing as well.
The battle from the very beginning of season 3, that went on for a long time because it was so much to shoot.
A long time.
But when it's just me and Babu fighting, it's a lot simpler. So we can just focus on our moves and all that kind of stuff. It's fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, this is perfect. I think we have a final trailer for you all, just giving you a little taste of what's to come. So before we get to that, thank you all for coming today. Thank you for your support of the show. Do not forget to tune in Sunday and then the usual time slot on Mondays, 9 p.m. Central. So here's a look at what's to come, and thanks again for coming.